Please have a seat. Fascinating session, huh? With
Absolutely,
Sasha.
yeah. Learned already quite a bit.
Yeah, yep. That's the whole.
Thank
That's
you.
the whole goal. That's the whole goal. So welcome. Glad
Thank
that
you.
you're here with
Great-
us today.
Great to be here. Yeah.
So you and I go back a long way, but I remember being at your IDC conference in Boston. Was it like a year ago or something, a year and a half ago, and hearing you talk about decision intelligence. I don't think you labeled it exactly like it at the time, and I fell off my chair. I was like, okay, this is really happening. You know, the leading firms and leading analysts and leading thought leaders are really framing this in a unique new way. And I was so excited and so proud. I think I came to see you afterwards and I'm like, okay, we got to talk more and we got to work together. But point being, when you and I talked about our respective careers, we started with the same DNA, 20-something years ago, and it all led to where we are today, to decision intelligence, to the augmentation and automation of decision making. So super excited to have this conversation with you. Tell us a little bit about your definition of DI, decision intelligence, and why is it important to a successful enterprise today?
Yeah, sure. And I'm glad you kind of mentioned the history because those of you who have been around in this space for a while remember that there was a point where things were called decision support systems. And then over the years, we got into the era of big data and data science, and the word decision kind of dropped out of the conversation. And what so IDC, we're a large market research firm. We survey hundreds of organizations. We interview dozens of organizations on a regular basis. And one of the things we started seeing is that there was all this emphasis on data, data, data. There was a lot of recent focus on AI and AI. And one of the things we do is we look at spending in the market, how much is spent. So in 2023, about $250 billion will be spent on building data lakes, data warehouses, data science platforms. This is software, this is infrastructure, this is professional services that many of your organizations are hiring to help out. And the question, I think, becomes, what is the ROI on all of that investment? And one of the things we saw was that we get, from our clients, we get inquiries about best use of these technologies. And often what we find is that there's this relationship between business and IT where the business says, we need data. Sasha was just talking about it. We need new information. And the natural reaction from IT is, great, we're going to build you the next warehouse. We're going to build you the next data lake. And now it's the data lake house, and it's going to get bigger and better, and it's going to be optimized. And then 6 months later, 9 months later, a year later, turns out that data is no longer relevant. We need something else. And we started noticing that if kind of leaders in this space, what they do is they don't ask what data do you need. They ask what decisions are you trying to make. And that really changes the conversation from a purely technology conversation to a decision-making conversation. So from a definitional perspective, the question that you actually asked me, we define decision intelligence as an ability to look at a decision-making process, to ensure that all the steps in the decision-making process are connected. And there are different ways of kind of describing those steps. And sometimes it's shown as a closed-loop process. If we can bring up a slide, I brought up a couple of slides with me to help us have this conversation. So sometimes it's a 4-step process, 6-step process. You may have different frameworks internally. But the point is that they need to be integrated. And so decision intelligence is the ability to integrate those steps, to have the technology to help you integrate those steps. We see plenty of great technology to do any one of these things. So you have business intel, great dashboards, great visualization tools that exist there. And what happens when a user gets information from those visualization tools today is they look at them, they see the performance in the last period, last week, last month. Great, what do I do next? How do I actually make a decision? What are my options? What are my choices? What is the system helping me predict? And that's often missing. And then there are great data science projects, and there are one-off projects. There's deep teams of data scientists with ML and AI expertise, but again, disconnected from the whole process of the decision making. So we define it as these steps,
6 steps
in a closed loop that are connected, and that's, I think, a key point.
And we were just talking with Sasha. You mentioned 2 things, right? Data. This, I think, this is exactly the way Dell looked at it. Is like, we had this conversation. Said, "Do you have the data?" And we're like, Sasha was like, "Fred, don't worry about this. If we know what we want to do, we'll get the data." But the second point, which I want to call out, is point number 5, which is the execution, right? I think when you're thinking about decision intelligence, we just think about helping decisions to be made. The execution part is really, really critical because it enables that closed loop that Sasha was mentioning earlier. Can you talk more about this? What's the role of number 5 here?
I think so that's one of the things that's missing, I think, from discrete technology tools that have existed for years, right? They help you make the decision, but they don't necessarily push it downstream. And I think it's very much related to the next step as well, is capturing that decision and learning from it, right? For the next cycle, whatever that next cycle is, whatever your frequency is, that's a really key component. And so we hear a lot in the technology field about data ops. And in the AI, we hear about model ops. And for most organizations, what's missing is decision ops.
Yep.
How do I capture the decision? How do I manage it, the life cycle of decision? So those 4 and 5, 6 are really related steps. Yeah.
No, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That's so core to everything that we believe in and what we do. So today, we're announcing something quite important that you've been working on for quite some time, which is a new study, a survey on decision intelligence, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
And good news is that if you're registered to that event online, we'll of course make sure that you get a copy of that paper. But can you walk us through your main conclusions?
Yes, and I like to say that the project took us about 9 months to do this research, but it took me about 20 years to get to it. Right?
Sounds familiar.
Yeah. We just a little bit of background. We studied about 320 global organizations, large organizations across 8 countries, across industries. Top-level decision makers, directors, VPs, SVPs, and above, some of the findings. So first of all, the number of use cases is enormous, and the applicability of decision intelligence. I think we heard about high-tech manufacturing, supply chain, healthcare. It's really we get questions: where are the use cases? And it's very difficult to answer, not because we don't know what they are, but because they're everywhere.
Yeah,
right?
decisions are everywhere.
If you're making decisions somewhere, operational decisions, tactical decisions, and I want to be clear, we're not talking here about those strategic decisions, right? If you're doing an M&A, that's not the technology for that. So I don't know if CEOs, I don't think will be replaced by decision intelligence anytime
I was
soon.
hoping. I was really hoping sometimes.
So one thing we found is that there's great expectations. So 75% of respondents to our research said that they expect positive returns from this investment, significant positive returns. So there was a scale there. And we also looked at a difference between kind of leaders and laggards, or leaders and followers in this scenario, or the best and the rest, right? And one of the things, again, to define the best from the rest, is the best were the ones who had really these 6 steps integrated and unified, and they have the unified technology to support that. And the rest they're still doing data analysis, and they're applying artificial intelligence in some cases, but they have a lot of discrete steps and discrete technologies. And so one of the things we found is that 25% more of the leaders are getting these supersized benefits from what they're doing. And what does that mean? It means, and we heard a little bit of that from Sasha from Dell, right? It means better decision quality. It means faster, greater speed. Better compliance, better consistency in decision. We hear consistency in decision making as one of the key areas, key benefits. And so all of that combined, we define as better decision making. And that leads then to better business outcomes, better customer retention, better employee retention, which I think is really important because there's also an ongoing level of discomfort with what does automation mean to me as the human employee.
Yep.
We find that in successful organizations, they are able to manage that change, and they're able to show take away some of those mundane tasks that people have to do today. There's one customer we talked to who said one of their initiatives was kind of to win back the weekend, right? So you don't have to work those extra hours of the weekend because you're now, some of those tasks have been automated for you.
And a lot of it, going back to point number 5 earlier, a lot of it is down to execution. Thank you. Because we're all focusing on deploying our expertise, experience, years of working in a company to make better decisions. But the execution is dull work, as we say, right? So taking care of the execution removes a big chunk of that dull work, which helps you win back your weekend, I guess.
Absolutely. And I just want to say one thing, and I'll go back one slide, I think this one here. What happens when you don't do that? So if you're not one of the leaders, this is what happens. And so this part of the study, let's go back. Yeah, I'm seeing a difference. Just to prove that this is a live show, I was seeing something else there. So 50% of data loses its value within hours, right? So think about it. So you could have the greatest technology in place, but if it doesn't get to the right person at the right time, within the flow of their decision-making process, all of that investment is not, turning a return for you. And you can see some of the other factors here. Data complexity is going up. A lot of respondents in the study are saying that they're overwhelmed by the complexity. And I don't think the complexity is going to get any easier with the way the external environment is today.
So when I saw this slide from you, I actually called you and I said, can I use that information? Because it was your data, and you said, Fred, you can take this one. But I love the idea of that high percentage of information decays within a day. But I think you have another slide that shows that the number of decisions that you have to make within a day is also very high, meaning that's the conclusion I gave, which was if you don't make the decision at the right time, it cannot be made anymore. It becomes irrelevant because the data that you need to make the decision decayed. And to me, that's the biggest driver for decision velocity. The speed that Sasha was talking about is that you don't make it on time, then it's not possible to make it later. And that's becoming an increasing number of or percentage of the decisions that companies have to make.
And one other finding was that, and it's on the slide as well, so sometimes people just don't get to the data given to them. And one of the biggest culprits there is, again, that disconnected nature, like giving somebody a report that is not part of the workflow, part of the decision process, decision flow. So again, you're not getting to use the data to make decisions.
And that kind of leads to think about the way that Amazon runs their meeting, where they ask people to read a memo during the meeting, because they know that executives come and they haven't read the information. So I think the point is valid. So what survey findings surprised you?
Anytime you do a study, if nothing surprises you, you probably didn't do it well. One of the things was over half, so 55% of top-level managers, executives, are not fully aware or fully understand how lower-level decisions are being made. So to me, that was a really surprising finding. And it suggests that there's a lack of visibility. And I think perhaps a lack of understanding of where the pain points are, which then affects funding for new initiatives. And I think it goes back to what we talked about earlier, capturing decisions, understanding the decision flow, the process, that it's not just disconnected, discrete steps of let me get the data, let me analyze it, right, and let me send it to somebody. So that was one of the surprising outcomes. We found also that about a third of decisions are not documented at all. So going back to the kind of decision ops, if they're not documented, and these are operational decisions, they should be automated, right? You know what they are. So that was another surprising outcome, or maybe it should have been surprising, but it was. And other things that surprised us, I think just the level of concern that certain individuals in companies had about the change, and we heard a little bit of that from Dell as well. So the change management aspect is extremely important. It's both the technology initiative, but it's also an organizational initiative.
Yeah.
That has to.
I want to bounce on the not understanding how decisions are being made. We've been at it for several years. I mentioned Aera delivered its first recommendations in early 2020, right before COVID. But the thing we've learned working with our clients is that, in many cases, our clients don't know how decisions are actually being made. And the challenge is that in many cases, they think they do. They have a documentation, they have their manual somewhere that says, this is how we plan, this is how we'll deliver, this is how we do all this stuff. But when it hits 3 levels below, 5 levels below, the operator in the warehouse with making that allocation decision, who's deciding how trucks are going to be routed, that person has her own way or his own way of doing things, biases, which are normal, part of human nature. So we did the initial projects, which was really interesting. We did exactly what the client asked. But then we delivered the recommendation, Aera delivered a recommendation, and they were not accepted. The level of acceptance was low. Why was it low? Not because the software was not doing what the software was being asked to do, but because the initial input was actually too far from the way the decisions were being made. I think that's changed. That was part of it also 3 years back, 4 years ago. Companies were looking at a technology like Aera as part of a digital innovation. It usually came from a digital team somewhere that had a budget and was trying to do something. I think we've shifted today with operations. So the operational leaders are now driving the deployment of decision intelligence, and I think we're better at warning them about that issue, the data issue, and the understanding of the decision that you're making issue. But it leads to another point, which is, are you leveraging decision intelligence to push top-down a unified way of making decisions? Or are you using decision intelligence to capture the tribal knowledge, how decisions are made across, some of our clients are the largest companies in the world, so they operate in dozens or more than 100 countries. Are you pushing down the process, trying to remove biases? Are you collecting that tribal knowledge to then analyze it and improve the overall model? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Absolutely. I don't think it's either or. I think both need to be done, and I think they're kind of related. There's a symbiotic relationship between the two. The more you automate, the more you can standardize, the more you're able to capture decisions and decision-making processes, learn from it, and then incorporate those learnings into the next cycle. So so there's a aspect of knowledge management that's very strong in many of these initiatives.
And we talked about, you kind of alluded to it, I think the art and the science of decision making is starting to occupy a proper space in an organization. We went from data and tools and data science to now, hey, how is it that we decide and what do we do? We'll talk about it in our presentation later as well. Go ahead.
No, I was just going to add one other thing. In the study, and this is, and I don't know if this was a surprise or not, but 20%, only 20% of respondents said that they're fully comfortable with the volume of decisions they have to make, right? So I think we're getting, as people, we're overwhelmed by the amount of information and the decisions that lead to out of that. And so I think that's the important part of the automation aspect. I think without automation, it's really unclear how organizations will be able to optimize and really derive value from both data and AI.
So switching gear a little bit, moving a bit from the survey, and again, we'll share the results. The paper is very well written, documented. I think it's fascinating to read. You're in your role, in your capacity as at IDC, you're being approached by companies, asking you, how do we improve productivity in this challenging environment? You talked about the economy moving. So where does DI, decision intelligence, fit into that? What do you advise your clients?
Look, the number one question today is AI. Everything is
ChatGPT.
AI, ChatGPT. When, how, why, how much.
Let's do it and we'll think about it later.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll actually bring up another slide when I talk about it. And the reality is that there's an opportunity to start applying AI today. And I think decision intelligence is that killer app today. Everybody needs to make decisions. Everybody's looking for better technology to do that. So this is an example of different steps, tasks, activities that go on alongside this decision-making process. And this is just high level, obviously. There's no AI. I don't think any of these words say artificial intelligence. And yet AI can be used to enhance each of them, right? From the data preparation, from the organization of data, from different data analysis techniques. Yes, it's not necessarily generative AI. My family and I just, with the kids, we watched Indiana Jones this weekend. They took Harrison Ford's character, who was an 80-year-old actor. They turned him into a 37-year-old actor. They used generative AI for that. How many organizations need to do that? I'm not sure. Yeah, it's great for Hollywood, right? But
I'll take it.
There are many. I think we need to not forget that AI is a very broad field. There are many different techniques for data analysis, and they can be applied throughout this process. And so the key thing we tell our clients, really understand the process, map out that decision-making process, and we heard that from Dell as well, understanding, and then take those stable processes where you really understand the process, and then figure out which steps need to be done by people, which steps can be automated, which steps can you augment the person, and which analytic techniques and ML and AI techniques do you use at each step, because they could be different within that process.
Yeah, I'll take the 30-year-old thing. I'm ready. So no, that's super interesting. And today I heard on the news this morning that the strike from the writers in Los Angeles was now over, and part of that was related to making sure that AI could not copy there and be too much inspired by their content. I had a slide in my opening, but I decided not to play it. I was writing in the plane. So I did this quick test on ChatGPT. I typed, and you can do it, mid-size decision intelligence keynote, 4 words. And it came up with 2 pages of amazing content. Mm-hmm. A lot of it was Aera's content. So I felt good about that because it means that ChatGPT is inspired by the work that we've done for the last 6 years. But it was actually pretty good. Mm-hmm. And I thought, let's not read it. I don't want to read it. I want this to be our event with our words. So, in French restaurants today, there is a little label in front that says whether they actually peel their own veggies. That means they make the food. I think we're going to have to make sure that for any speech, any presentation, there is a AI or no AI involved in the discussion. But jokes aside, we're talking with an audience that, again, kind of similar question I asked Sasha earlier, that's considering decision intelligence. So based on your expertise, the many hundreds of conversations you're having with companies around, and the survey, what do you want? What advice do you want to leave the audience with?
Your boards, your executives are asking about AI today. We know that. We work with a lot of them. And the question, again, is what are we doing about artificial intelligence? And I would encourage everyone to experiment with generative AI, some of these newer technologies. There's some very exciting things that are possible. But there's also an application of AI today that will actually impact your next quarter's performance and your next year's performance. I think the verdict is still out with generative AI. It's being applied very interestingly on unstructured data, text, long-form text, images, video, audio, not yet on really structured data as effectively. I think it's going to happen at some point in the future, but here's an opportunity to use capabilities of decision intelligence to make an impact today. And if anybody's asking you for a business case internally, I would say one of the takeaways is this is the opportunity today.
And if you stay until the end of the show, you may have some happy surprises with Gen AI on structured data, but yeah. I'm not saying anything too early here. Dan, thank you so much. Great to have you. Great. And thanks for the work, the collaboration, the leadership. And please, thanks, Dan, for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.